Welcome
Good.
to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Bruce Woodhead, newly elected Deputy Chairman of the States of Alderney General Services Committee. Today we are going to take a look at Bruce's views on the states. Bruce, good to see you.
Good morning, Tony. Good to see you too.
First of all, can we talk about the last general election? Because effectively it was uncontested, 5 places, 4 people stood. Any idea why the public don't seem to want to get involved?
It's a very difficult question, and it's one that we are asking ourselves at the moment. I think forgetting the last 2 years, which has obviously been different from other years, prior to that, I think that the states maybe lacked a bit of leadership. Certainly, it doesn't help when the chief executive officer is moved in and out. And I believe that the overall feeling that was coming out of the states, from the civil service side and from the politician side, as far as the public was concerned, was that nobody was really caring, nobody was doing anything, whereas in fact they were, but they weren't actually achieving a great deal to show to the public, and I think the public were getting pretty fed up.
So lack of communication goes a long way on these things, doesn't it?
An enormous way, and one of the things that we are looking at very carefully at the moment is how we promote to the general public what we're doing, how good the civil service are, because they are good, how the politicians that are there now are tied together and they're not fighting each other. They are really working extremely well indeed. And of course, this will take a month or two to come through, but we will start doing much better PR work and much better presentation.
Because there's no doubt in the past, a lot of members of the public, myself included, sort of tended to think of the states as 10 people all going in different directions and all having their own opinions and not necessarily sort of having an objective in terms of the common good. You'd agree with that?
I do agree 100%. And that's exactly how I probably thought about the states up until now. And it's one of the things that Nigel has been very good at. Nigel Boot, that is, has been very good at bringing people together. We have got some pretty good common aims, though, the airport and various other things. And I mean, the pandemic was a terrible thing, but it brought the states together. It brought the civil service and the politicians together. So I think overall, there's a much better feeling now than there has been in the past, and hopefully we can project that to the public.
Why do existing members of the states always put the newcomers into the hot seats?
Always is a bit of a heavy word. I think
I can think of 3 occasions.
Well, I can think of 2 certainly. I mean, Bill Abel came in and went straight to chair of BNF because he was the right person to do it at the time. Ian Carter had 18 months, so he was sort of trained for it to some extent. Nigel is, I think, personally, is a special case in as much that his background is very solid. He's been in the right industry. He understands money. He understands what's happening. He's been joined on to various committees of the states. So he's not as green as you think. I mean, he actually has had a lot to do. So putting him into the hot seat was where he wanted to be. It's what he joined to do. And so give him a few minutes and you'll see the result.
Oh, I'm quite impressed so far, I have to say.
Good.
But, you know, as a concept, it does seem to me in the past that existing members should have been prepared to put themselves up as chairs, but there we are. Anyway, as far as the General Services Committee is concerned, putting policies into practice, no planning officer. What happened there?
what happened there? Well, Tizzy left. It's quite simple. She was of an age when she was very happy to retire, and was looking forward to retirement. It's actually one of these things that happens, and when you look at it properly, it's maybe going to give us an opportunity, because a lot of people have felt that our planning should be a bit closer linked to Guernsey. Guernsey have a very strong professional planning group, and to try and replicate it here, it is a waste of money.
Sure.
And while we can have the planning committee here and we can have the planning meetings, the professional side of it, we believe, and we're testing this out now, can be better done in Guernsey by professional planning officers who obviously know Alderney, and maybe there will be a specific officer over there who is appointed not to be in Alderney, but to know Alderney and to know its quirks. And I think it's a good opportunity to just relook at our planning situation.
So you'd obviously have to pay them some sort of consultancy fee, presumably, for carrying out this function.
Yes, and I have no idea whether it'll be more or less than Tizzy.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is that you can offset the Tizzy factor, can't you, against it?
Yeah.
When's this likely to happen?
Well, it's happening now. I mean, it's got to happen immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is underway because planning applications are coming in, and so it's an ongoing game.
That's good. Coming on to the CEO, has Liz Morris now been formally appointed, or what's the situation as far as she's concerned?
Situation as far as she's concerned is that we decided not to appoint a new CEO. We decided that, and she was happy to accept it, that she was a stand-in CEO, acting CEO. And we wanted to see how this was going to pan out, how it was going to work. It creates slight problems with holidays and who's taking over and who's doing things. But overall, we wanted to have a look and see where we went wrong in the last 3 appointments of CEOs. And that's very, very important. Because it did go wrong, and it wasn't their fault. It wasn't necessarily all our fault, but the point is that they were appointed, they weren't the right people for the job, they didn't enjoy the job, and they didn't stay with the job.
Lizzie's status, is she currently an Alderney civil servant? I mean, it's always been traditional for the State's Treasurer to be a Guernsey civil servant. So how does that work?
Well, she is still the Treasurer. So she's on that part, she is still paid by Guernsey.
All right. So Bruce, you're doing all right there, aren't you? Financially.
I'm sure it comes back to us one way or another.
Following the debacle in the states of Guernsey in connection with goods and services tax, have you got any ideas as to how they can improve the revenue inflow? Eventually,
they will have to bring GST in. We backed GST as a states, as it were, because we could see the hole that had been created. We could see that we were going to lose out quite heavily because of the cutback on capital expenditure, and so I think this is a very personal thing, but I always thought that they should have excluded essential services. And I think that had they excluded essential services from the beginning, I know it came through as an amendment later on, but had they done so, I personally feel that they would have had a better chance of getting it through.
Fact of the matter is, of course, that they're due a general election, aren't they, next year? Is it something like that, I think?
That's correct.
I suppose it's going to hang around till then, perhaps.
Well, politicians, for some reason or other, do change towards the general election because
Well,
they,
they're not going to promote GST, are they? That's for sure.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it won't happen till after that. But I think everybody over in Guernsey, at some point, it doesn't matter which camp you're in, has promoted GST as being probably the only way to get out of this.
Yeah. But they've got to try and make it as equitable as possible, haven't they? Because despite the fact they're talking about raising tax allowances and social security levels and everything else, it's still the people at the bottom of the income chain that's going to suffer the most.
It shouldn't be. It's a tax of choice. And Guernsey did a very good job in softening the blow to start with, but of course that happens at the beginning. It's an excellent tax for governments, and consequently,
they love it.
It's one of the easiest ways of raising your money. But if you keep essentials away from it, then yeah, I mean, it affects everybody, but it's a tax.
What are you saying, Bruce? Food and clothes and things like that to be exempt?
And fuels,
electricity, gas, etc., etc. Yeah,
absolutely, okay. Yes.
Yeah. Coming on to your own remit, the state of the roads is not good at the present time. I'm sure you'll agree. And given the fact that part of our petrol money goes to what was the road tax, when are we going to see some maintenance carried out?
Okay, fair question. We took a decision that we are going to hold off the major road repairs until we know, and this may sound a bit wishy-washy, but until we know the result and when the work is going to start on the runway. The reason for that is that the plant that is here for creating the tarmac macadam and such like is in need of a good few 100,000 spent on it, which if the airport goes ahead, they will do. Then we can use it, and we can have a much lower cost to doing the road. So we have taken a judgment that we will fill and make good where we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in the UK, the local authority is responsible for damage to vehicles, isn't it? As a result of potholes and things like that. Do you carry that sort of responsibility as a government? If you're not clear,
honestly, truly, I mean, I knew there would be the odd question, having only been with the government for 3 months. There had to be the odd one that I didn't know.
It wasn't supposed to be a curved ball, but
no, I appreciate that.
As far as people are concerned, obviously if they're going along a road that's supposed to be maintained by the states and there's a big pothole and they do severe damage to their wheels, suspension, etc., etc., you have to ask yourself what the score is. You can check that out and come back to us at some later stage, Bruce.
I happily so. I would agree with you. It should be, but bear in mind we only go at 30 miles an hour, so damage is not great.
Now, as far as the airport refurbishment's concerned, that's obviously looking very much, in the air, excuse the pun, at the present time in terms of getting the full works. Presumably, they'll have to do the minimum requirement that the CAA put up in terms of widening the runway, etc., but not necessarily lengthening it. Do you see that as the situation if, the states of Guernsey decide not to proceed with the full works?
No, I don't at the moment, actually, because we were approached by the states of Guernsey to provide a longer runway so that Alderney could reduce the number and types of planes that they operate, so that they could operate a single type of plane, save themselves a couple of million a year, which Guernsey sees as a way of actually financing the extension to the runway. So when they're looking, and we promote to them that when they're looking at their capital budget and the carving of the capital budget, which they're inevitably going to have to do, this is a self-financing situation, and we're hoping we'll come out of that discussion. So we're not as pessimistic as you.
How did you ever get that feeling? But if, for example, they come back and they say, look, we haven't got the money, but we have already committed to the original idea, which was to widen it and resurface it, etc., you wouldn't then be responsible for the £3 million that's so far been committed by the States of Alderney?
Hopefully not.
So in other words, you know, you're in for they either do the whole thing, in which case they get the money, or they don't, and therefore you retain the money.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah, okay. Aurigny fares are getting quite crazy. £270 for 2 people day return to Guernsey, £500 for 2 people Southampton. I
don't think it's 270 day return to go for 2 people, you say?
Yeah. 135
for 2 people,
each.
okay. I mean, today a ticket is what? Yes, 80 quid. Yeah. It's 60 quid, 80 quid for a flexi ticket. And we do tend to buy flexi tickets because we're never quite sure what's going on these days. They're high. They're very high. And I don't think it's going to change, because if you look back in history, I seem to remember reading an article where the cost of a flight 20 years ago was the equivalent of today's cost in real terms. And so, you know, you're just not going to get it much cheaper, I'm afraid.
But it's a bit insulting when they offer a flight to Exeter from Guernsey for £9.99, isn't
it? It's sickening.
Yes.
Yes, it's terrible. I mean, I mean, you know, we won't get that. We live on a little island. We're not going to get this sort of service.
No, this is true. But the fact of the matter is, you and I and everybody else actually physically own that airline, don't we? We're all stakeholders in it. Government represents the citizens.
Yes.
And, you know, to that end, I think the citizens could be a little bit more fairly treated. But there we are. Anyway,
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you.
Let's get off airlines and things like that. How about the Connaught? Is that on target in terms of completing it?
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, I checked this out with Kevin Gentle, who's looking after looking after it. He's the man who kicks the builder. Yeah. And in the nicest possible way. And yes, he's very happy that it is going to be finished on time.
Good. Well, that's good in terms of the fact that it's had a lot of problems in between, mainly COVID and things like that, to hold it up.
Absolutely.
Talking about Connaughts, the old Connaught and affordable housing, what are the plans there?
Well, I mean, that's close to my heart. I mean, my background is development. Yeah. And so I have come in very keen to see Whitegates, to see the old Connaught moving. We have a very nice plan at the moment, which shows about 10 flats in the Connaught, which are good quality, which would also give 6 essential workers units. How this is dealt with and how we manage to do it, we're at the moment trying to work out. But it is a real plan for something that could come off. I know that Lynn Morris is very, very hot on Whitegates at the moment and is pushing that very hard. Bill Abel is now totally responsible for ensuring that the swimming pool is resolved very quickly.
Yeah.
So we have jobs that we have to do, and it's quite a good system.
When I interviewed Nigel Root a few months ago, well, perhaps a month, 6 weeks ago, we talked about how can you help first-time buyers, and I suggested, and he poo-pooed it, that possibly think in terms of reverse congee, pay a nominal amount of congee at completion of the purchase, and let the rest of it effectively stack up until such time as the house was sold, or within a set period. What do you think about that?
I don't think he poo-pooed it as being. I think possibly we would like to see a much bigger a contribution towards assisting first-time buyers, etc., etc. I mean, Guernsey has a very good system, which is here, but it doesn't work very well here, and that is part ownership.
Yeah.
System. Well, I mean, in theory, if you can buy a house for half the market value and live in it with your family and such like, that's an ideal situation.
Yeah.
And so we're looking a bit beyond playing around with congee and such like. We're trying to get to a point where there is a real benefit to first-time buyers and low-cost housing.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Let's get down to the harbour. The crane
Yes.
costs £750,000. It still gets left on the quay. Doesn't appear to be maintained in terms of being cleaned or anything. Surely, with a piece of kit that expensive, you should have, had some sort of covering or perhaps a shed or something like that for it.
Well, first of all, the £750,000 gives you a vehicle which is meant to live outside anyway. It's pretty tough here because it's being sprayed with sea water all the time. It is washed down. It is maintained. We do have a port for it to go into, as it were, but quite seriously, it is used so often that the back and forwarding is I'm told, is almost worse for it than leaving it stationary on the quayside. But as long as it's maintained, washed down, and kept in good nick, we're quite happy that it won't rust away.
Good, because the previous one, which was a similar model, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah. So, I can't help feeling that the same fate could apply to the current one.
Well, maybe we'll have a roll-on, roll-off system before it does.
That would be good. Right. Okay. I actually remember one, which was the Devonian. Do you remember that? Probably, perhaps.
No, I don't. No.
Going back a long time. It worked very well. It came out of Torquay, actually.
All right.
Any views on the energy programme? That's something that the states are supposed to be looking at.
Oh, and we are looking at it very hard indeed. I mean, there is an energy group which is working very closely with AEL, and we are studying the wind and the different types of wind energy that we can collect, also solar energy. The general feelings are that while solar energy panels on rooftops are good for the individual, the solar energy generally for collection is better to put it in a mass area.
Yeah.
One of the problems we've got with renewable energies is that we have to get to a certain stage so we can knock off a generator.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no saving, sort of thing. So we are on it, very much so.
Okay. Well, most of the time we get plenty of wind. Do you think you've also got to educate the public into saying you have to make certain sacrifices to try and sort out the energy situation, like, for example, putting in a windmill somewhere on Alderney?
I'm afraid you do. I mean, yes, if it is deemed that a large windmill will provide our electricity as needed, together with a certain amount of storage, then we will have to educate people into that fact. And a windmill will have to become a beautiful thing.
Broadband speeds. Part of the art of doing business on Alderney is having reasonable broadband speeds, and we simply are not getting those at the present time. When we finish this, I will upload this interview to YouTube. It will take an hour for a 30-minute interview.
What have you got on your, I mean, you won't believe it.
On the speed test, I don't make one.
You don't make one?
On the upload.
Megabyte per second? Don't you? On the upload. Okay.
Yeah, on the upload. The upload obviously takes longer, but, you know, it's just an example of where we're lacking out a bit. And I mean, it's so essential, Bruce, these days to have efficient internet, isn't it?
It really is essential, and I'm surprised. I don't know where you are exactly, but I mean, there are places on the island which are considerably better than that.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not fantastic. You're quite right. I'd be honest with you. We don't actually have a program at the moment for doing anything about it, but it is on the cards. It's not forgotten.
Electronic connectivity being probably more important than physical travel connectivity, if you see what I mean.
I do indeed. I mean, I think that there's a massive potential for business on the island, provided you've got proper connectivity.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Let's get on to messy things now. How are the sewerage schemes coming along?
Very well indeed. The sort of phase 2 of the sewerage coming up down Petty Val is now approved, and the finances are approved for it, and it will connect up with a filter. It'll connect up through to Fort Doyle, and it'll be filtered just on the side of Platsaline, below ground, so that we remove all solids, plastics, etc.
When do you hope to put that out to tender?
No, we're going to do it ourselves.
All right, okay. Well, I suppose it's, you know, fairly straightforward, isn't it, in terms of digging a trench and putting a pipe in?
You've got it just right. Yes, because all the work has been done down Petty Val. Yeah, and it's just a matter of, as you quite rightly say, going through a bit of soil. I think sort of by the autumn we should be almost connected up.
Okay, that'll be good.
And then there will be sort of 30 odd houses can connect into it, and that will save a lot, because it saves the it's not septic tanks but cesspit emptying, etc. So slowly, there are some further phases to come, but it's moving okay.
Okay, that's good news. Swimming pool, you mentioned that in general terms at the beginning. Bill Abel, I think, is involved with it. What are we talking about here? Utilising that building down at the school that was paid for by quite a big public contribution, or actually going somewhere else?
I think we are. I don't think we've got we don't have a plan at the moment.
Right.
I mean, there have been suggestions put forward by various groups, but we just don't have a plan at the moment.
Of course, you know, in retrospect, with hindsight, should never have happened, should it? The one down at the school, because the kids have been deprived of a swimming facility now for about 6 years.
I know. It was very badly conceived, and I have to be very careful what I say, because of course other people were very keen and did it and put a lot of work into it. A lot of money from the public has gone into it, as well as the states. So, but it turned out to be a bad conception.
Is there any further developments on Fort Torgy, or is that gone back to bed for another 20 years?
I think that as a developer, personally, I don't see Fort Torgy as a viable project. Certainly at the moment, when we have get good connectivity in every sense to the island, then maybe people will invest large sums of money if we want them to.
Yeah.
But I don't actually see it happening, whatever people say, just at the moment.
No. And I have also been asked to point out the railway, the derelict steam crane. Is that likely to be sorted out shortly?
It's a Guernsey responsibility. They've agreed to take it, and they've agreed to chop it up and take it away.
Right.
We're waiting for them to do it.
Whose liability, though, is it if anything, anybody gets injured in that vicinity?
You live on Alderney with many areas of danger
and uncertainty. Okay. We'll leave it on the basis that you will continue to pester Guernsey to get it sorted.
Yeah. Now listen, I'm going to have to go and get a lead and just connect onto. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Right. We don't normally have little natural breaks like this, but he's gone to get a lead.
I'm sure you don't, but if we don't do it, we should run out.
I had to keep talking. I had to keep talking. We only got one topic left, and that topic is biodiversity, which, as you know, did create quite a stink last year. And there was a sort of informal public meeting, and Boyd Kelly at that stage made certain undertakings that it wouldn't be put into law. Where are we on that now, Bruce?
Well, we've now reached phase 3 because the first presentation did cause some wicked problems. And the second presentation, people tended to still think back on the first presentation. So Boyd was quite correct. And what has happened is that we have adjusted the thing. And I think we're probably going to have another public meeting so that we can demonstrate to people that there is no longer any danger relating to private property or anything of that nature.
Yeah. Well, that would be a very good thing to clear the air, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And some of the stuff that's so far been accumulated just used for guidance in the future, or what? Would you just, in terms of what the Wildlife Trust was trying to do?
No, I think a lot of the stuff that they would like to do was just very poorly presented, so that it looked as though they were going to take charge. I mean, it was almost, why have a government?
The NGO becomes the government.
There we are. But no, we want them to do the work. We are very keen on biodiversity. It's just that we have to take away the suggestion that there's any legal side to or ability to it.
Yeah. Bruce, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Despite our little technical problems at the start, we've got there in the end. So many thanks. Possibly we can do another one, perhaps in, say, 6 months' time, something like that, with an update.
Absolutely delighted to. I shall probably know a little more then.
Thanks, Bruce. Cheers.
Thank you, Tony. Bye-bye.